AITA for exposing my wife's affair at Thanksgiving and serving divorce papers? I, a 31-year-old man, had been married to Savannah, 27, for 4 years. I met her in college when I was finishing my degree in agricultural management, and she was studying marketing. I first saw her at a tailgate party before a homecoming game. She kept glancing over at our group, and then she eventually came over with her friends. She tried that I accidentally bumped into you move, but she completely spilled her drink on my favorite team jersey. I just laughed and threw out a cheesy line like, "I guess you owe me dinner now." She turned completely red and embarrassed. She kept apologizing, then took my number. We started dating. The beginning was great. We stayed up late talking about everything. She told me about her childhood with overly religious parents. I told her about losing my dad at 15 and how I helped my mom keep our farm running. We hung out in my pickup truck looking at the stars and making plans. She would sketch house designs while I talked about crop yields and equipment, which surprisingly didn't bore her. After 2 years of dating, I proposed to her at her favorite spot by the lake. I spent a considerable amount of money on a ring that made her cry with emotion. That night, she told me she wanted to have my children one day. Fast forward, and I thought I had everything I needed. A solid marriage, my own farm, a future I had built with my own 2 hands. Nothing was handed to me. Every penny came from 70-hour work weeks, bank loans, and smart investments in equipment and land. I turned 40 acres of decent soil into a productive operation that brought in nearly $300,000 last year, and I never hesitated to give Savannah the life she dreamed of. When we got married, we were on the same page about kids, a family, all of that. But a year later, Savannah started saying we should wait a bit for kids. It wasn't what I had planned, but I wasn't going to pressure her into becoming a mother if she didn't feel ready. So I put more energy into our life as a couple. She had this dream of a rustic, high-end lifestyle. So I bought a small farmstead just outside of town. But let me tell you, Savannah's version of rustic cost a fortune. She wanted a purebred horse that cost well into the 6 figures because, in her words, regular horses just didn't have the right look. The horse served no practical purpose. It just stayed in the pasture looking pretty while I paid $2,000 a month for its special feed, the vet, and a trainer. Then, she wanted imported Brahman cattle because our local Hereford cows were, and I quote, too basic. And don't get me started on the trucks. A new diesel pickup every year because the previous year's model was no longer good enough, and I paid for everything. As long as she was happy, I figured it was worth it. And then, the descent began. The surprise of my life. One day, Savannah's best friend, Emily, sent me a text saying we needed to talk. Just that, need to talk, it's important. Can I come over when Savannah isn't there? I thought she was planning a surprise party for Savannah or something like that. She was not. Emily and I were never close. She was Savannah's high school friend, always struggling financially. The type to constantly post on social media about her side hustles and entrepreneurial spirit, but who never seemed to get ahead. She was a vet assistant by day and worked as a waitress at a local steakhouse on weekends to pay for her small apartment. Lately, she had been talking a lot about an organic pet food project she was developing. She claimed that regular kibble was full of fillers and that her homemade recipes had saved her cat's life. She even asked me a few months ago if I would be willing to invest. I said maybe without really believing in it. She never seemed very serious to me. A new genius idea every week, but no action behind it. When she arrived at my house, I immediately sensed something was wrong. First, she texted me 5 minutes before arriving to make sure Savannah wasn't there. She was extremely nervous. Want a coffee? I offered. She said, "This won't take long." Then she pulled out a folder, put it on the kitchen table, and said, "You need to see this." I thought it was a business plan or a loan request, but upon opening it, my world collapsed. Inside was a meticulously documented account of the end of my marriage. Screenshots, photos, videos, hotel receipts, everything. Savannah was having an affair with Dr. Landon Hayes, our local veterinarian. Yes, the same guy who charged me $5,000 when one of our horses had colic. The very same one who sent me a Christmas card with his perfect family on it. His wife, Caroline, teaches Sunday school and organizes charity bake sales. Oh my God, was all I could say as I turned the pages. There were over 70 pages of evidence. Emily had organized everything by date with sticky notes explaining each item. It was scarily efficient. The photos were very suggestive. I won't go into details. There were videos of them leaving a motel while she claimed to be at her mom's helping with a church event. Footage from our own security camera showing his truck arriving 20 minutes after I left for a 3-day trip, and footage of them leaving together 2 days later, sharing an intimate moment in front of his car. Hundreds of texts like, "I can't wait for him to leave again," or "Don't worry, babe, he doesn't suspect a thing." Reading that felt like getting kicked in the chest by one of those expensive Brahmin cows. It had been going on for 8 months. Every girl's weekend was a weekend with him. Every time I left town to pick up equipment, he was at my house. The camera showed his truck at our property at least 11 times during my absences. There was a hotel bill from Nashville. A weekend where she told me she was at a spa with Emily and 2 other friends. The funny thing is, Emily was actually on vacation in Florida that weekend. I remember because she had posted 50 beach photos, so her other friends were completely fabricated. It was just her and this vet in a suite that I had paid for. And the worst part? She was pregnant. Not with my child, but with his. I had even taken her to the doctor, worried about her health. And meanwhile, she was sending selfies to the vet with messages like, "Your baby is making me feel sick today, and I can't wait to tell him it's his. That way he'll stop begging for a kid." There was a screenshot of their exchange from 3 weeks ago. Her, "I'm going to have to tell him soon. It's starting to show a bit." Him, "What are you going to tell him?" Her, "That it's his, obviously. He's wanted a kid forever. He'll be so happy he won't even do the math." I had to step outside. I walked around the yard, on the verge of either getting sick or breaking something. The audacity. She planned to make me believe the child was mine, while continuing her relationship with the biological father. When I came back inside, Emily was still there, looking at her phone as if she hadn't just destroyed my life. "How long have you known?" I asked. "I suspected for 6 months. I've had concrete proof for 3. Why tell me now?" And then, Emily dropped the real reason. "I know this is horrible," she said, not looking at me. "But I need to leave this town, start over somewhere else. I have everything planned for my business. I just lack the funds." I looked at her. "You want me to invest in your project? Are you serious?" She shook her head. "No, not like that. The problem is Savannah knows I saw her messages. She caught me taking screenshots during a girls' night out. She went to the bathroom without locking her phone, and I snooped. I took pictures of her messages. She came back early and saw me. She lost it. She threatened me. Said if I talked, her dad would make sure I never worked in this county again. She's telling people I'm a liar, that I made a move on Landon and he rejected me. People are starting to believe her." I didn't know if I believed her whole story, but the evidence was undeniable. Dates, locations, photos, everything matched up with the times Savannah claimed to be elsewhere. When I asked her how she had gathered so much evidence, she told me she had help from 2 friends. They had followed Savannah for months to collect everything. According to Emily, she just wanted to protect herself. "So what do you want? A loan?" I asked, "Or an investment? Call it what you want. $50,000. I have a real, solid business plan. The organic pet food market is exploding. I just need someone to believe in me." In that moment, I almost respected her directness. At least she was honest about her motives, unlike others. And besides, the fact that she brought me this information, whatever her reasons, saved me from living a lie any longer, from raising another man's child thinking it was mine, from wasting more years of my life with someone who clearly took me for a complete fool. "Leave your business plan," I told her. "Let me handle this first, then we'll talk." She nodded, relieved. As she was leaving, she turned around. "For what it's worth, I always thought you deserved better than her." Yeah, right, as if I was going to fall for that. But she had delivered, and I always pay my debts. I continued to go through the folder. They were mocking me. Actual jokes about how oblivious I was, about how hard I worked while they had fun, how convenient it was that I traveled so much for the farm. Even jokes about the luxury farm equipment I had bought, giving them more time to be alone while I was working. I opened our bank statements on my computer and started cross-referencing dates and expenses. I found at least $15,000 over the last 8 months that she couldn't account for. Cash withdrawals, purchases at jewelry stores for items I never saw, a weekend in a rental cabin. But it gets even better. I found screenshots of Savannah's conversations with her parents. Her parents, the ever-righteous Pastor David Caldwell and his perfect wife Margaret, knew everything, and decided to cover it all up to preserve their pristine image. And Pastor Caldwell isn't just any pastor. He runs the First Baptist Church, the largest and most influential church in our county. Over 500 members, the kind of place where all the prominent families show up on Sundays. He drives a brand new Cadillac Escalade, paid for by the church for ministry needs. His wife Margaret runs the women's ministry and half a dozen charity committees. These people have been the moral compass of our community for over 20 years, always preaching about family values and saying the world is in decline because people don't follow God's rules. And guess what? They knew from the start that their daughter was being unfaithful to me. There were texts from Savannah to her mother. "Mom, I'm panicking. Emily knows about Landon and me. What if she tells Wyatt?" And the reply, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Your father will handle it." Emily's mother needs that recommendation letter for the school board. She won't risk it. Another message from her dad to Savannah. "We spoke with Emily. She understands what is at stake. Just be more careful in the future." The same people who invited me to dinner every week. The same man who called me son. The same woman who asked me when we were going to give her a grandchild. All while knowing their daughter was involved with another man and expecting his child. I kept scrolling through the messages, and it got even worse. There was a whole discussion on how to handle the baby situation. "I've thought about your situation," wrote Pastor Caldwell. "I think the best solution is to let Wyatt believe the child is his for now. Later, when the situation with Landon has calmed down, we can consider other options." Landon mentioned moving his practice, maybe to the same area. Then, after a suitable delay, you can ask for a divorce. Consider it penance for your choices. The alternative would be considerable damage to our reputation and my position at the church. That was the whole plan. Make me believe I was going to be a father, let me raise someone else's child for a year or two, then get a divorce, wait a bit, and have her end up with the real father. All to protect her father's reputation and his job. I couldn't believe these were the same people who had welcomed me into their family, who had prayed for our marriage, who had gifted us a family Bible with a handwritten note about honoring vows before God. The irony was suffocating. The more I learned, the clearer everything became. Why were Savannah's parents so involved in our lives lately? Why did they drop by unannounced? Why did they call Savannah several times a day? They weren't carrying in-laws. They were managing their daughter's secret relationship. Every Sunday for 4 years, I sat in the pews of that church listening to Pastor Caldwell preach about integrity, honesty, and righteous living. I donated money to their foundation. I volunteered at their events. I respected them as my spiritual guides and my family. And all this time, they were playing me for a fool. When I finished reading everything, I put the documents back in the folder and locked it in my safe. These people thought they were smart, but they were about to learn that a country boy isn't as simple as they think. Once I had all the evidence, I didn't waste time. First thing I did was call a divorce lawyer. A guy named Marcus Thorne, 3 counties over, so nobody would know yet. I spent about 48 hours keeping up my usual routine, acting like nothing was wrong. Partly to gather my thoughts, partly to watch Savannah lie on a daily basis. It was like watching a play where I was the fool, except now I knew the script. I even attended Sunday dinner at her parents' house the day after my discovery. Pastor Caldwell said the prayer, asking God to bless this food and this family. The whole scene was almost comical. Then on Monday morning, I made the call. I told Savannah I had to check a field with an irrigation problem. I drove 40 miles to a Starbucks in the next county and called Marcus from the parking lot. His first question, "Do you have a prenuptial agreement?" No. But the good news for me was that our state is not a community property state, which means Savannah is only entitled to what she can prove she contributed to the marital assets. And seeing as she spent more than she ever made with her failed online boutiques, that's not much. The farm is in my name, purchased before the marriage. She couldn't touch it. No house, no land, no money, just a mountain of debt and a baby that wasn't mine. With such well-documented infidelity and a pregnancy that was clearly not mine, we had a very strong case. The court doesn't look favorably on this kind of deception. He explained the process to me, filing the petition, getting a temporary injunction, the discovery phase, and a possible settlement. He told me to gather all financial records, bank statements, property titles, and anything proving what I owned before and during the marriage. I printed bank statements showing cash withdrawals that matched hotel bookings. I even had recordings of her phone calls. It's legal in our state, which allows one-party consent for recording. My lawyer was thrilled. He told me that with so much evidence, Savannah wouldn't get a penny more than what the law strictly requires. In fact, given the circumstances, we could even file a claim against her for fraud. Making me believe I was the father of the child is intentional deception that could be classified as legal fraud, not to mention the marital funds used to finance the affair. She wanted freedom. She could have it, but without my money. While Marcus handled the case, I discreetly transferred the majority of our liquid assets to accounts solely in my name. Not all of it, but I made sure that if Savannah suddenly decided to empty our joint accounts, she wouldn't find much. Next, I called a real estate agent to appraise the house and the farm. Rick, a specialist in agricultural properties. He came to take a look, appraised the whole operation, and gave me a figure 30% higher than I expected. Apparently, land values had skyrocketed in our area due to a new commercial development project. Everything was ready to sell as soon as the divorce was finalized. By the time Savannah figured out what was happening, I'd be long gone. I also started looking at properties about 500 miles away. I found a beautiful cattle ranch in Montana for sale for less than what mine would bring in. Better water rights, more land, a newer house. I made a few phone calls. Nothing concrete yet, but it felt good to have options. The worst part was when she started dropping hints about the pregnancy, refusing a glass of wine at dinner, talking about morning sickness, and buying saltine crackers. A whole production just for me, to set the stage for the big announcement that I was going to be a dad. One night, she snuggled up to me on the couch, talking about our future, about how maybe it was time to talk about having kids again. I just sat there nodding, saying all the right things while feeling absolutely nothing inside. Playing the part was exhausting, but also strangely satisfying. Every time I saw her lie, every fake smile I gave her back, every knowing nod to her bogus stories, it all confirmed that I was making the right decision. These people were going to get what they deserved. Marcus called me regularly with updates. The paperwork was moving forward. He had found legal precedents in our favor. He had found a process server who specialized in delicate situations. How do you want to proceed? He asked me. At home or in public? That's when I thought of Thanksgiving. Every year, we attend the big service at her dad's church, then have dinner at her parents' house. Their big house would be filled with relatives, church elders, and family friends. The perfect setting. I had a long talk with my farm manager, Mike, who has been with me for 3 years. A solid, trustworthy guy. I told him I might have to leave in a hurry. Mike just nodded. Everything will be handled, boss. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I met Emily at a diner 2 towns over. I slid her an envelope with a $25,000 check. Half now, the other half when it's all over, I told her. Come to the Thanksgiving dinner like nothing happened. Are you still invited? Yes, she shook her head. Margaret called yesterday to confirm. I think they're afraid I'll cause a scene if they uninvite me. Perfect. Act normal, and I'll see you there. She nodded. Landon and Caroline would be there too. Margaret had invited them last month. Even better. Having the vet and his wife present made the whole thing even more fitting. The whole gang together. 2 nights before Thanksgiving, I was in my buddy Tom's garage while he was tinkering with his Harley. We've been friends since high school. He's the only one I told everything to. Man, just serve her the papers at home and move on. All this isn't necessary, he told me. It's not for the drama, I replied. It's for the consequences. These people think they can do whatever they want without ever paying for it. Well, not this time. Tom shook his head. It's your funeral, man. Just don't count on me to help you hide anything. I laughed. No need, just a well-deserved public reckoning. Driving home that night, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. Everything was ready. The papers, the process server, the plan. In less than 48 hours, Savannah and her family were going to discover that their perfect little plan had a major flaw. They forgot who they were dealing with. I'm not some fragile city boy who crumbles at the first hardship. I grew up watching crops fail, animals get sick, and machines break down at the worst possible times. When everything goes wrong on the farm, you don't cry about it. You clean up the mess and you move forward. And that's exactly what I was about to do. Now, for the grand finale. Thanksgiving. It wasn't just any simple Thanksgiving in our town. At First Baptist, it's practically a second Christmas. Pastor Caldwell organizes a huge harvest celebration service in the morning with the church decorated with hay bales, corn stalks, the whole 9 yards. Everyone who is anyone is there. Then the inner circle is invited to dinner at the pastor's house. We're talking 30 to 40 people crammed into their dining room and living room. Margaret spends a week cooking and baking, even though the majority of the food actually comes from a fancy caterer in the city. She just pretends she made it all herself. Church elders, major donors, family members, and a few special guests they're trying to impress or recruit. Every year, it's the same routine. We arrive early to help set up, which mostly means I lug chairs and tables around while Savannah and her mom chat in the kitchen. Pastor Caldwell makes a whole spectacle out of carving the turkey himself. Then he gives an endless blessing that sounds like a second sermon. 3 days prior, I had confirmed everything with Marcus. The papers were ready, multiple copies, one for Savannah, one for her parents, and extra copies just in case. Everything was neatly tucked into separate envelopes. The process server, a guy named Derek, was booked for 2 p.m., right when dinner was supposed to start. Then I called Emily to make sure she was still on board. Everyone still expects you to be there, she confirmed. Margaret called yesterday to finalize the head count. She said to be there at 1:30. Perfect. Act normal and make sure your phone is charged. Why? Do you want me to do something? No, but you're going to want to record what's about to happen. Trust me. The day before Thanksgiving, Savannah was running around getting everything ready. She was baking pies that we would pass off as homemade. They came from the local bakery, simply transferred into her own pie dishes. Can you go pick up my dress from the dry cleaners? She asked me. And we have to leave at 8 tomorrow morning to help Mom set everything up. No problem, I replied, taking the ticket. Do we need anything else? She thought for a minute. Maybe some flowers for the centerpiece. Mom loves it when we bring flowers. Sure. I went into town, picked up her dress, then stopped by the florist. I ordered the most expensive arrangement they had. When the florist asked if I wanted to include a message, I just smiled. No message. The flowers will speak for themselves. That evening, I packed a small overnight bag and hid it in my truck. Just enough for a few days, along with some cash. I had already booked a motel room about 60 miles away. I barely slept that night. I felt like a kid on Christmas Eve, except instead of gifts, I was ready to deliver a reality check to my wife and her hypocritical family. The morning of Thanksgiving, I got up early and put on my best suit, the one I save for weddings and funerals. It felt appropriate. Savannah spent an extra hour on her makeup and hair. She put on this new dress that was tight enough to show off the slight baby bump she thought I hadn't noticed. The church service went exactly as it did every year. The sanctuary was packed, at least 600 people squeezed in. Pastor Caldwell preached about gratitude and family, looking directly at me several times while he talked about the sacred bonds between husband and wife. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. God sees our hearts, he thundered from the pulpit. He knows our true intentions. We can hide nothing from him. After the service, everyone gathered in the foyer for handshakes, hugs, and small talk. Pastor Caldwell greeted guests like a politician, making sure to speak to all the important people. Margaret fluttered about, handing out leftover programs and reminding the special guests to come to dinner. I spotted Emily standing near the coffee station, looking at her phone. When she saw me, she gave a discreet nod. Everything was ready. The guests started arriving around 1 p.m. The regulars, church elders and their wives, Savannah's brother and his family, her grandmother who lives in a fancy retirement home, a few cousins, and the special guests. This year, it was a doctor and his wife who had just moved to town and were looking for a church, as well as a major real estate developer who was considering donating to build a new youth center. By 1:45, everyone was there, chatting over sparkling cider. Of course, Baptists don't drink, at least not in front of other Baptists. I kept an eye on the door and on my phone, waiting for Derek's text. At 1:55, my phone buzzed. In position. 5 minutes. I took a deep breath and started directing people to their seats. Pastor Caldwell would like to begin. Please find your name cards. Savannah sat next to me. She seemed nervous, and I realized she was probably planning to announce her pregnancy during dinner. The timing couldn't be better. Her father stood at the head of the table. Before we begin this wonderful meal, I would like to say a few words of thanks. Ding dong. The doorbell rang right on cue. Margaret started to get up. I'll get it. No. Pastor Caldwell stopped her with a gesture. Stay seated. It's probably a late guest. He walked to the door, still wearing his carving apron. Then we heard him say, "I'm sorry, we are in the middle of a family dinner." Derek, calm and professional, replied, "I am looking for Savannah Mitchell." Silence. Then the pastor called out, his voice strained. "Savannah, someone is here for you." The room went dead silent. All eyes were on Savannah, who stood up, confused. She walked toward the door where her father was waiting, his face frozen. Derek was holding several envelopes. "This is for you," he said, handing her the largest one. "And this is for David and Margaret Caldwell." He handed 2 other envelopes to the pastor, who took them mechanically. "You have all been officially served. Have a good day." Savannah stood frozen. Pastor Caldwell looked as pale as a ghost. I just leaned back in my chair and watched Savannah open the envelope. There was dead silence in the room. She saw the first page, then looked at me. I looked her right in the eyes, perfectly calm. No yelling, no scene, just the facts. She liked secrets. Well, now everyone was in on hers. Her face turned white, then red. "What is this?" she whispered. "The technical term, I believe, is a petition for dissolution of marriage," I replied loud enough for everyone to hear, "with proof of infidelity, paternity fraud, and conspiracy to deceive. There are copies for your parents, too. They're named in it for helping you cover it up." Her dad was already opening his envelope, skimming the documents with growing horror. Margaret hadn't even opened hers. She was just staring at me like I had grown a second head. I slowly stood up, making sure I had the entire room's attention. Then I took out my phone and played one of the videos. It showed Savannah and Landon coming out of a motel, sharing a kiss in the parking lot. The timestamp was perfectly readable. 2 months prior, when she was supposed to be at a marketing conference in Nashville. "I have about 6 hours of video like this," I said, turning the screen so everyone could see, plus the texts, the bank statements, and of course, the paternity test I will be requesting for the child she is carrying. Spoiler alert, it's not mine. That's when Caroline, Landon's wife, stood up abruptly. "What child? What is he talking about?" "Landon." Landon looked like he was about to pass out. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I asked, still calm. "Explain that you've been in a relationship with my wife, that you're the father of her baby, and that her parents helped cover it all up?" Pastor Caldwell finally spoke up. "This is outrageous. How dare you come into my home and make these accusations?" I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "Accusations? You're holding the proof in your hands, Pastor." Page 12. The messages where you tell Savannah to be more careful and where you discuss how to handle the pregnancy. Pretty specific for mere accusations, wouldn't you say? The look on his face was worth every penny I had spent. Savannah was flipping through the papers. "Where did you get all this? How did you?" Then her eyes landed on Emily, who was calmly recording the scene on her phone. You did this." Emily shrugged. "Looks like your dad's threats didn't work as well as you thought." Caroline had grabbed Landon's envelope and was reading it through tears. 6 months. You've been doing this for 6 months. She looked at Savannah, who couldn't even meet her gaze. She was staring at the floor as if hoping it would open up and swallow her. The other guests were frozen. Some were slowly edging toward the exit. I let the silence hang for a moment, then I stood up. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone," I said. "Savannah, I'd wish you and the baby good health, but I'd be lying. And as for the rest of you, maybe next time you'll think twice before covering up other people's deceptions. Especially you, Pastor. Isn't lying a sin in your book?" Then I walked out without looking back. I didn't need to. I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Caroline yelling at Landon, the pastor trying to regain control of the room. Margaret was in tears. Someone knocked over a chair. I got into my truck and drove away. When I hit the highway, my phone was blowing up with notifications. Text from Savannah. "How could you do this? We need to talk. Come back." Voicemails from her dad, ranging from threats to begging, and even a barely comprehensible, tearful one from Margaret. I turned off my phone and just kept driving. The motel was waiting for me, and after that, a brand new life, far away from that whole circus. Emily texted me later that night when I briefly turned my phone back on. "That was a complete meltdown after you left." Landon's wife threw the gravy boat right at his forehead. "LOL. When do I get the rest of my payment?" "Check your account," I replied. "Already transferred. Thanks for the show." "Every cent was worth it," she replied. Best Thanksgiving of my life. And I had to admit, sitting in that dingy motel room, I felt better than I had in months. No more lies, no more pretending. Tomorrow, I would call Marcus to go over the next steps. Tonight, I was going to sleep deeply for the first time in weeks, knowing that I had finally served up the cold, hard justice that those people so richly deserved. Comment. My biggest takeaway from stories like this is the incredible strength found in self-respect. It is a powerful reminder that setting firm boundaries is not an act of aggression, but a necessary act of self-preservation. We cannot control how others treat us, but we always have the power to decide what we will accept. Choosing your own peace over someone else's chaos is a profound form of strength. True kindness must also extend to yourself, especially when that means walking away from a situation that compromises your well-being. The path to healing truly begins the moment you decide you deserve honesty and transparency. Letting go is not about giving up. It is about making space for something better to enter your life. Your future is too important to be built on a foundation of deceit. I hope you always remember your worth and have the courage to choose your own happiness. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.